I believe every business owner has a story to tell. Through seeking true, authentic insights about the entrepreneurial journey, I provide a platform for our peers to share their stories and inspire those that listen. This is the County Business Talks podcast, powered by Picture Book Films.
I backed myself. I believed in myself and I backed myself. Even, I was listening to somebody talk about Graham Potter managing Brighton, and the day we beat Man United 4-0, that was one of the greatest days of my life. I'd never seen Brighton play like that. It was like watching Barcelona wear our guys' shirts, and it was like watching Barcelona play Man United. And it was the confidence I couldn't believe, the little back passes, and when you've got Ronaldo in front of you, and you've got Webster just backheeling it, across, and you just think that confidence, unbelievable. And somebody said, well, that's Graham Potter. His mentality is back yourself, believe in yourself, resilience and entrepreneurs. Because I think having good ideas is one thing, being able to execute those ideas is another thing, and then being able to stick with those ideas when it's not going your way. And anybody you speak to, whether they're a billionaire or nobody's path is easy. We've always kept it fun within electric. We've always kept it. I think if people are enjoying it and they feel part of something, you keep it moving forward. And I still believe in that, without any pressure. Success is taking one of those goals that you've set and seeing it come to fruition. And sometimes that might be with some of your key people, and it was a conscious decision for Electric to be a brand and not a person. It's important to have dreams, it's important to have goals, and it's important to have the energy and the desire to try your best to make those happen. And nobody ever makes everything happen. All the top entrepreneurs have all failed a few times as well. We've got that unique story, and we are working with some of the best hairdressers in the world who genuinely believe in it, and that means a lot to me. So that'll help me build the farm. I believe in training the next generation of hairdressers, and I believe in trying to do things a bit differently. So we will grow electric space, we will grow the freelancer element, and we will teach that entrepreneurship, but we'll never turn our back on traditional salons and building people's careers.
It's not all been plain sailing for me. I had a very bad time in the late 80s. I'd set my own business up then. It wasn't marketing. I'd set a business doing promotional clothing. And it was ticking along nicely about 3 years in. And then in 88, interest rates at 18%. And it wiped me out. Absolutely wiped me out. Lost my money. I had young children. Really tough time. And I said to my wife, I will be back. We will be back within 3 years. And I did. I met that target. Turnover is vanity and profit is sanity. I was chasing turnover and I wasn't making enough profit. So, it was a really tough time. We had to downsize everything. It's looking for opportunities. It's reacting to them, being proactive rather than reactive. Because while somebody's thinking it through, I've done it. That's the thing about sales. You should never give up. And to me, that was a great example, and I use it still to this day. That one last call, if I hadn't have done it, I wouldn't have won that client.
Do you know what? There's never a right time to do it. There is always a reason not to do something. So if you let that reason be your decision-making factor, then you're not actually ever going to do anything. Absolutely, I'm a product of looking at the experiences I had as a child. And I think the biggest thing that shaped me is actually I lost my mum at a very young age. I was only 7 when she died. And that, obviously, a huge impact at the time, huge impact growing up. Giving him those experiences and those life memories, for me, that's my having it all. And I could work 12 hours a day and drive a Bentley or whatever, that's not my having it all. If that's what you want to do, if anyone else wants to do that, all power to them. Just find what motivates you, what is your identifier as having it all, and then work to that. The expectation was exactly like our parents did. I was very fortunate. My mum, before she died, she did work. She worked at the BBC. She was a bit of a maverick. Maybe that's where I get it from. But when she had the children, it was expected that she stopped working, and she volunteered for Meals on Wheels. And that was really kind of the expectation coming through. And I just thought, nah, that's not for me. And I want to work in the music industry, and I just want to go and just do my own thing. And we still have this real perception that private school clever equals better than maybe someone who, if they will learn business skills or mortgages and credit cards and life skills or politics, you might find someone who's like the greatest politician on planet Earth that went to an academy school that was academised because it was failing, but they haven't had that opportunity. And it's about levelling off and changing the perception of those opportunities. Do you know, actually, it was Sir Clive Woodward that put it absolutely best. There is absolutely no difference between sport and business, because at the end of the day, it's just getting the best out of people.
There's been quite a few drip-fed issues of equality throughout my journey, I guess. So when my marriage broke down in 2008, I went back to university, did a degree in event management, decided that I wanted to work in the events industry, and gleefully applied for jobs in London, thinking I would just walk into this amazing events job and that would be the start of my new career. And at least 3 different places turned me down and were quite clear that it was because I was a single mum.
But for a woman going into it, I need it to change. I need it to change, and it's my problem. Shouldn't be, but that's the way it feels it is. So that's that. We've got to talk reality. Especially in football, I find you've got to talk reality, and it still is, the world is still essentially sexist, and there's still a lot of change to be made. And I tell you what though, if we can do it in football, we can do it anywhere.
I just knew that it was something that I really, really had to do. Like, I didn't see any other option at that time. I still don't. I still think the mission is really important. I still think that women need representation. And I just felt that I don't know what I'm doing, but the only way that I will get to know what I'm doing is just to keep on this path. And it took an awful lot of resilience, and it was difficult. And I don't know if you remember, a few years ago there was a very big company and their manifesto was leaked on how women should and shouldn't behave, and it was wear heels a certain length, talk at a lower tone of voice, don't laugh too high pitched. And it was one of the big global companies, and I was just it's trying to get that mission out there that it's okay to have joy, and joy is concomitant with health. It's so important.
The more that I campaign for women's football and for women to be footballers, for girls to be playing and learning those lessons of leadership and resilience, even what you're talking about, that goes so smoothly into the world of business, making decisions, focusing, teamwork, all the stuff they learn on the pitch, doing it in public so you're not self-conscious all the time. Do you know what I mean? So important for girls and women. Men have had access to this for years. The more we break down one set of stereotypes on one side, the more we allow the other side to just be who they are. We get all little boys at Lewis FC women's matches seeing these women as great role models, and meaning they don't have to do it if they don't want to do it. Do you know what I mean? And we get the girls at the men's matches that can see that you can go either way. You can be whatever gender you are and follow your own path. This is what we're trying to say. Be yourself.
But really what has always been my primary goal from day one is just to look after people. And actually, if you look after people, you treat them with respect, then they'll do business with you and they'll look after you in return. But then it progressed into criminal activity, and it nearly sunk the business, to be honest. I came back from honeymoon in 2013. I'd never taken 3 weeks off so the business had been going for 6 years. And so I took 3 weeks off because I thought, well, I've got Emma running the office, I've got my business partner, and it'll be fine. And something wasn't right when I came back, and gradually this whole web of deceit and fraud started coming to the surface, and it was quite, and it overflowed into our personal lives because we were friends outside of work, and so it was a pretty explosive period. But again, looking back, it's all sort of a learning point. There's always a learning point. Even if we've done everything we could, there's always something we can take from it and think, well, if we did that right at the start, maybe this wouldn't have happened. So I'm always looking at ways to learn from any little ripple or little negative that happens to see how we can then future-proof things a bit better. I'm a minority here in for age and for orientation, but I fit in still. And actually, I'm interesting because of it. They're all the same, and I think a lot of people, whether it's a disability or being an ethnic minority or something that sets you apart, being able to use that as your superpower in business is an incredibly important thing to realise. And the first thing she said was, I wasn't sure if I should do this because it's not legal to be gay in my country. And I suddenly just realised we're so lucky, because when you see someone who's thinking, I don't know for my own personal safety if I should be appearing on this online forum because it's still illegal for me to be who I am in my country, and we're in a recording studio today, she spends her life in those places doing things, and just to have that always hanging over you that actually the state, the government of the country doesn't provide protection for you or even acknowledge your existence. So that shows you that whether we're in a little bubble here that we all feel safe and happy, there's always a fight going on for equality. It's quite unhealthy to the culture of business if people start thinking that's the only way you're going to be successful is if you're working 16-hour days and you're absorbing all these things, because that's not compatible with family life for most people. It's not compatible with just a healthy work-life balance. And we all go through periods of graft, but I think consistency is far more important, because if you can survive on 4 hours or 5 hours sleep and do all those things, then great. But I think being consistent, and the only thing I chase is happiness. So success for me just is me being happy, the people around me being happy, and the people in the business being happy.
So I'm going to drop the bomb early here, and so it's not something I've told everyone yet, but I had a recent diagnosis of ADHD. Well, a form of ADHD called ADD, more the attention deficit disorder side rather than with the H, the hyperactivity, their mindset. So just little things in life made me realise, well, if you sort of set a goal for something and you're open to opportunities, don't know exactly how you're going to get there, or even if you're best qualified to achieve that goal, that positive mindset and visualization is so helpful in terms of environmental sustainability, social sustainability, because without people feeling empowered to do things better for the environment, then it's all together. That's really important to me, how that makes me feel. All sorts of different emotions. There's some anger there as well, and also sadness with the so many species that we've lost. But the positive side of we are now as businesses, individuals, actually in a time in history where we are aware of what's happened, but we can do something about it, and I think that's really, really exciting. When these people start talking to each other, incredible things can happen. You get that collaboration, and just everything. We're ultimately all connected, part of this one system on planet Earth. So let's embrace it and make the most of it.
My story actually stems from overseas. I was adopted when I was in 1990 by two English parents from Romania. So spent the first years of my life in an orphanage. The journey through my life versus the journey through business, they're very, very different. Very different types of things that I've had to navigate. I then went back to the orphanage, which I talked to you about, when I was 14, 15 years old, which for me resurfaced things that I didn't necessarily know were there, but then they came back So I then started getting angry towards that, but I didn't know that I was being angry towards it. I was just being angry, just like spurts of anger. And then it got to a point when I was about 17 years old, when I got arrested. Yeah, that's when my parents knew that there was something wrong. There was something wrong. There wasn't something right that was going on in my life. But yeah, just got to a point where I had that conversation with my parents. I was like, look, guys, I'm not wanting to be here on a permanent residency. I don't want to be here because I'm going to end up dead. My life was falling apart. I was doing shit I shouldn't be doing. And I wish I'd just spent a bit more time just to sort of sit back and say, look, this is what happened. But then I got to a point where, February 2020, I overdosed. There's one thing that I really realised and why I'm here today is because I asked myself that question. You've got two options here. You can either let this shit consume you. You might as well just do it. Or you can use everything negative in your life as fuel for positivity and change. And I took that route. And that's why I'm still here today.
We worked a lot with businesses who maybe did just have an idea, but it was how they articulated that idea. And, why were they starting this business? Why did they want to? And more like sort of what you're doing, businesses that actually have a story to tell about why they have started that business was always quite intriguing. So when this opportunity came along, although a lot of my colleagues thought I was mad, because it was a completely different thing, going to work in this tiny little team. There was only 7 of us, I think, when I joined. And then, you asked me what we were looking for in those people that we worked with, but also from my perspective, I know I learned so much about myself, really pushing myself out my comfort zone massively. The one we held down here, we held it at the cricket club, and Penina was actually our guest speaker there, Penina Shepherd. And I'll never forget the one thing that Penina said, and one of her first slides that she put up was the word fear. And she said that everything that you have ever wanted is on the other side of fear. The one thing that we really created in the hubs was a real sense of community. It's definitely that sense of if you'd actually work together, you can actually reach more people as well and have a bigger impact in that way. So, yeah, I'm very much, I think I always have been, I'm very much all about collaboration, and where I can orchestrate collaborations or partnerships, then I do, because, I believe in it always has a positive outcome. It was a really hard time, actually, for me back in South Africa, and a lot of people here, and I've only realised since I've come back and even talking to you that people were actually quite sad that I left, which I didn't even think of it like that. I just thought, I'm going off to do this thing now, and I'm going to be, everything's going to work out and I'm going to be accepted back there. And it wasn't. I went through some very, very dark times when I was back there because my money was running out. I wasn't working. South Africa, as I say, has no support system in terms of benefits or anything. It wouldn't have enabled me to appreciate a lot more of what I actually have here. I'm so appreciative of what I have in the UK because I saw a very different side of life in South Africa and how people struggle there. And I'm very grateful for my life here.
So it's 30 years this year since I was in a fire, and I think from the 30 years beyond that point, I was just running into life like head on to kind of almost make up for the stuff that I felt that I'd lost in life. I was never actually on fire, but I was trapped in a garage and had to fight my way out and stuff, and managed to do that. My mum was in the front of the ambulance. My dad was still in the UK and had to fly over. I died twice on the way. That they stopped they told my mum they were just changing drips and stuff, but really I was flatlining in the back of the ambulance. I was in a coma when I first got there, then I brought out the coma, then it was written across my file in massive red writing, allergic to penicillin. Someone didn't read it. They administered penicillin on me. I nearly died again, so they had to put me back into a coma for another 7 or 10 days. No, not that first day. That first day, hands down, was the hardest day of my entire life. So forget all the massive operations and this and that, and you know, the actual day happened itself. That day was the hardest day. You know, this 30-year journey of me kind of not running away from, you know, the accident that happened to me at 14, but I was like, wow, you've had an amazing ride now, and it was like I just stopped and paused. And if I think of it visually, I imagine the scene in Forrest Gump where Tom Hanks is running, and he's running and running and running and doesn't really know why he's running, and he's not really running away from anything. He's just running and he's thinking, and then one day he's in the middle of the desert and he just stops and he turns around and there's just all these people behind him, and I stopped, I think, in January this year, and I turned back, and just for the first time really kind of looked back with great pride in, bloody hell, Mark, you've actually done all right and you've achieved quite a lot. And I stopped, but then I also saw the people behind me, you know, that I've gathered along the way, and the incredible network I had, and I was like, okay, yeah, you've now got into that place in life where you're not going to do something purposeful because you feel like you need to justify what's happened to you. I felt like over those 30 years got everything that I needed back from life to finally even up the score with what the universe had thrown at me when I was 14.
It's like there's one script, and so, you know, I can't have an experience without trying to make it positive. That's just not how my brain works. And so I started writing a blog called Not the Blueprint, and that was all about just not fitting in, because I didn't fit in now, because it wasn't like I was desperate for children and I couldn't have them, which was definitely one camp. It wasn't like I was desperate for children and I'd had them, that was another camp. Or I never wanted them, never even tried. I didn't fit in that camp either. I just seemed to sort of fall between the cracks of never really wanted it, did it to try and save my marriage, didn't work out, and lost everything. When we found out we'd lost whatever was there. But it had taken us 2 years to get 7 weeks pregnant, and some people were really dismissive. So when I've told people, sometimes I'm like, oh, you were only 7 weeks. You're only 7 weeks. Oh, like they were going to feel sorry for me, and now they don't. And it's like, it's enormous to go through something like that. It's one of the most awful days of my entire life, for sure. So there was definitely some dark days in that time where I just did not know what life was going to look like now. Like who was I without him and without our relationship, and, you know, moving houses and, you know, changing jobs and constantly trying to find the thing that was going to make me feel like I was myself again. And that was really tough. I think it's unrealistic to expect to just be kind of at one level the whole time. You know, life is ups and downs, and there are times when I can talk about my journey like now and I can be fine, and there's other times where I'll just burst into tears over it. There's a lot to keep processing, and it's a big thing that happened, but I now know the tools that help me, the people that help me, you know, the things that will bring me joy and bring me happiness. And I just really believe that we're here for a good time, not a long time. And so you have to do whatever you've got to do to try and make the time that you do have as precious as possible. That was really important, the fact that we do have a mix of ages, like we're predominantly between 35 and 50, I'd say, but we do have people either side, and I love that as well. I love people and their stories, and I think we can all learn from each other. I just felt that it was the right thing to do, and so I started it, and then I've learned, and I keep learning, and I keep trying, and I keep changing things, and I'm not afraid. Because, you know, the worst thing that could have ever happened has already happened. You know, a lot like losing my dad, going through the miscarriage and the divorce, you know, it'd be quite hard to top those things. And so I feel slightly invincible in that regard, because I know that I'm always going to be highly employable. I know that I'm a good person, and I know that I'm only trying to do a good thing. Get it? Like, you know, it's human to go through that. And I think that's the other thing I always want to really promote. We're so good at trying to sort of paper over human emotions, but it's normal to fail, it's normal to be scared, it's normal to be vulnerable, it's normal that everything doesn't go right every time. They're normal things, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about them.
You tell your kids, you know, you can have anything, yeah, but the one thing you can't have is everything. So you have to realise at some point that sometimes it is enough, and understand what is enough, because if you're constantly striving, then you're never going to be happy. You're never going to find that contentment that ultimately people are searching for. Maybe you're not content with the choices you've made. Maybe you've breached your moral code in order to get there. And, you know, if you're living with, I think there's a phrase I learned recently, cognitive dissonance, where your actions, you know, kind of don't portray the morals that you've got, then, you know, you're sort of destined to live a life that's not as fulfilled as maybe it could have been, which is a real shame. And it's really common because, let's be honest, when do you seek out counselling? When do you seek out a life coach? You seek these things out when you aren't doing well, when you're in a bad place. But actually what we need is great people around us from a really early age to start to kind of just check in with us and say, right, how are things? How are you progressing? Because we all need that little bit of a steer from time to time. You know, in answer to the question, what did I sacrifice? Well, I sacrificed things that were around my personal life, really, whether that was my physical health, my mental health, the health and well-being of my family and my relationships. You know, we set the business up, as I said, in 2003, started trading in 2004, and I had my first really poor mental health experience in 2005. But I didn't listen to my body, I didn't listen to my brain that was sort of crying out for help. And ironically, it was the pause that we all got forced upon us by COVID. And that coincided with effectively a third dip in my mental health, where, you know, I had a moment, just a completely different way of looking at this, which was, look, this is ridiculous, you know, because it coincided with just having effectively realised all my dreams in terms of my success, or, you know, whether that be financial or otherwise. This can't be right. This can't be right. Something needs to change, and so yeah, that's really what sort of triggered the last couple of years of self-reflection, and yeah, I'm in a very different place nowadays.
And I always think there's like the 3 Ps. You've got your people, your profit, of course, and the processes. And it's amazing. You ask people what P is the most important, and they're all important. But I'm like, actually, it's people first. My best friend, he died, so I lost my best friend. And I guess it goes back to, obviously, the heartache that gives. And I think when that happened, I promised to myself, like, you've got to see things positively. Because, you know, being a youngster, it didn't hit me straight away. It hit me further on down the line, to lose Russ, and it was a case of it kind of ignited the flame to be like, no, life is short. We've got to be able to really like see the positive where we can. When we started Itty Bitty, actually, that's pretty huge. Where we started that, where I left my previous position in the job. So I had 0 income, and unfortunately at the same time Kate, she was made redundant, so literally there's 0 income with a family to look after. Because of where we was in a position whereby no income, no jobs, we had to make this work. And I call it the wall, and that feeling of anxiety and worry is the wall. And it's, you know, it was awful, because how are we going to pay for the mortgage? How are we going to pay for the car? How are we going to pay for the family? How are we going to pay for food? Literally starting a business and speaking to so many businesses, and the stats that fell after the first year is incredible. And that's what I call the wall. That feeling, like, makes me feel sick. I may not show it, but it makes me feel sick. And I want to be as far away from that wall as possible. The biggest take I tell people is that what anyone wants to start a business is a case of the best time is probably like yesterday. The next best time is right now. It's just to do it. Just do it, and don't let your brain take over. Just do it.
He was going to bring us up the right way and give us great ethos and respect for other people and whatever, and show us what a family. We've never had that. We've had challenges where we thought, how are we going to get over this? But that's where the family's strong. That's where we're at our best. That's when we come.
The 3 of you don't need to be dealing with the same issue, the same problem. You know, like quite often, like Chris was accounts, so like there's, as he said, there's bailiffs coming in and stuff like that. I never really dealt with that bit because they were dealing with it. So it didn't need me standing there looking in on it. What they needed me to do was be at the coalface. Earning, yeah. and that's what I've done.
But what we never done, we never buried our heads in the sand. No. So instead of them bringing the water to us, we took it to them. Yeah. And they respected that, I'll be honest with you. You'd have to be a force then to get anything past.
And to be honest, we've become a little bit selective because we really want to work with people. A lot of our client base, I would go out.
The fact that you've still got the business and you can go to sleep at night and know that you've done a pretty good job, I think that's how you measure success.
That is a pivotal moment, I think, for everyone, honestly. For us, we just had our biggest ever year. 2019 festival, we'd had something like just over 600,000 people attending the Fringe. We had just over 1,000 events, somewhere around 5,500 performances, 180 venues, and 2020 was looking amazing. I mean, we'd sold over £100,000 worth of tickets. We were 3 weeks out from the venue builds, and then everything stopped. Maybe that will happen. And then when Boris came on saying that's it, was it 18th of March or something? We were dropped off a cliff. Really, we were really staring down the barrel of the gun. It was about £350,000 we had to find. I remember the first time going out to see a show after what was 6 months of lockdowns and everything closed. I had tears in my eyes just to think I'm sitting here in a theatre watching live performance. And in the end, Brighton Fringe is a platform for people to take part in the arts. And nothing can really replace the transient joy that you experience of sitting down or standing up, beer in your hand or not, and watching the lights go up and teetering on a knife edge. Really, it really is. It could be the last ever Fringe.
I've worked in kitchens where there has been abuse, there has been, banter, borderline bullying, but the industry's worked very, very hard in the last couple of years to change it, and it is changing and it's getting better. I think it all comes down to passion. I think if you enjoy what you do, then actually when you work, it doesn't feel like work, so you don't mind putting in the hours if you actually love what you're doing. Burnout is definitely a real thing. That's something the industry needs to be very, very careful of, and that's why it has got better. Burnout is definitely very real in hospitality and in business. The realisation of getting that chunk of money, a fair chunk of money, over 6 figures, and it hit your account, and you're like, well, it literally made no difference to me. I think as entrepreneurs, we always have this thing of, right, what's next? You can't always appreciate what's there. The reality is, mate, we are heading into a massive crisis. The crisis is way bigger than coronavirus, which is childhood obesity. The stats are scary. 1 in 3 children now leave primary school either overweight or obese. We spend more on treating obesity on the NHS than we do the police, fire and judicial system combined. Just be true to yourself. Spend time with the people you want to spend time with, and just smile and learn and always be inquisitive.
I left school just before I was 16 with in my head the school telling me you'll be lucky if you can clear rubbish. But on the other side of the coin, of course, I had my dad who just constantly told me you can do what you want and be what you want, and I believe in you, son. A page of words frightens me, a blank page excites me. Over the 31 years, no exaggeration to say 25 out of 31 I think I'm going to lose the business. Getting up Monday morning, being a good person, doing your best. Losing Dad had a profound effect on me. But that was losing that person on my shoulder telling me, you have my permission, you can do anything you want. I was stepping up to the challenge, but my body couldn't do it. So the longest swim, I managed to get 8 hours into the swim. And then my coach pulled me out and said, you're literally going to die. I mean, any athlete would tell you, you've got to have rest days. I couldn't do it on this because I'd committed to doing one Olympic triathlon every week for 52 weeks. We all have 24 hours in a day. if you want to do something, find a way of doing it. So I think my work-life balance is perfect. Mark Twain, best quote, Mark Twain quote. I'm an old man and I've suffered many problems, the majority of which never happened. Be the best that you can be, full stop. I think that's it. I think if it's not be the best you can be, and that means how you treat people and how you treat yourself.